Hey guys, it's Sydney and I'm back today with another video for you about how to plan your travel within a country. When you're planning travel within a country, there are 5 steps, 5 steps that you want to do before you get into the nitty-gritty fun stuff, like what you're going to do when you get there, where you're going to go, where you're going to eat. Before you do all that you want to do to make your life a whole lot easier. So if you follow these 5 steps that I'm about to tell you, I promise you it'll make your vacation that much more fun because you won't have to worry about anything after you've completed these. Things first, I want to clear the air and just say that this is a video for those of you who are planning like 2 to 3 week vacations, not 6 month vacations. So if you are looking for a video on that, this can help you, but I will make a video on that later on because that's a whole nother ball game, all right? So this is for those of you that are planning 2 to 3 week vacations, although there is still plenty of valuable information. Step number 1 is going to be figure out the biggest things you want to do or the biggest cities that you want to go to while you're there. Think of these as bucket list items. Maybe, depending on how long you're going, it could be 3 places, it could be 5 places, it could be 7 places. It all depends on how long you are staying there and what kind of a traveler you are. But think of these bucket list things. I'm going to use Italy, for example, because I lived there for so long. But think of these bucket list items as... Sorry, the cat is right here. Think of these as bucket list items, you know, like the Trevi Fountain, the Colosseum, you want to do a wine tasting, you want to see the Duomo and Michelangelo, or not Michelangelo, you want to see the David by Michelangelo. Think of those as big things, big ticket items that you know you want to do because you might not ever go back to Italy or wherever again. So that's Italy, but example, if you're going to Peru, you might want to say, oh, I have to see Machu Picchu, I have to see certain Incan ruins, I have to do Rainbow Mountain, and I have to do sandboarding in the desert. So those are the things you have to do while you're there. Step number 2 is planning a big picture itinerary. And what I recommend doing for this is going to Pinterest and literally in the search bar typing in however long you're going. So say you're going to Italy for 14 days and typing in the search bar 14-day Italy itinerary, or 2-week Italy itinerary, 10-day Italy itinerary, 3-week Italy itinerary, 1-week Italy itinerary, and so much will pop up. All of the bloggers out there in the world, all of their itineraries that they have, all slightly different, all doing their own thing, will come up and it will do the work for you. It will plan, say, you're go to Rome, then Florence, then Venice, then Milan, then Cinque Terre, back to Rome. It'll give you that, and that'll tell you, okay, that sounds like a 10-day itinerary to me. So it'll give you that and you can go from there. So this is also the part where you're going to be looking into what kind of travel are you going to be going to. For example, in Peru, it was cheapest to take the bus, but it took 24 hours to take the bus anywhere. And then flying really wasn't that much more expensive and took way less time. So we opted to fly. There were really no trains except for one time that we took the train from Cusco to Machu Picchu. That was the only train we ever took. And that was an expensive train ride. So here's where you're going to be looking into what kind of travel you want to do. So if you're going with 6 people, maybe it'll be cheapest for all of you collectively to rent a car. I mean, I'm a firm believer that renting cars is by far the best way to go, but if you're traveling by yourself, sometimes it's not the most economical way to travel. So then you're going to be flying by plane. I almost said flying by train. So you're going to be flying by plane, or you're going to be taking the trains, or you're going to be taking the buses. It all depends on the location that you're going to. For Europe, obviously, Europe has a great railway system. For South America, you're probably going to be taking a lot of buses, or there's Avianca, which is a pretty cheap airline, which you can fly, from one country to the next, or from, we flew from Lima to Cusco for like $100 round trip. So it's really, just kind of have to look into what kind of transportation you're going to use. And those itineraries, most of the time, those bloggers will have itineraries for you that include the method of travel. So like, for example, if you go and look on my blog, about my 2-week Italy itinerary, I'll tell you, you know, you're going to be taking the train everywhere. Pretty much everybody knows that anyways. But I'll say, okay, so now you're going to take the train from Rome to Florence. Because you flew into Rome, Florence is your next spot. From Florence, you're going to do a whole bunch, and you can take day trips everywhere. So it all just depends on the country that you're in, and that's specific research that you're going to have to do. Step number 3 is figuring out how long you're going to need in each city. So you want 4 days in Rome, 3 days in Florence, 2 days in Venice, 1 day, and 4 days in Amalfi Coast. Okay, you know that. Good, perfect, shada bing, shada boom, you're done. Like I said, don't look too much into planning a city, kind of know the big things at this point. You're gonna plan your cities later on, but you know, think, you know, okay, when I go to the Amalfi Coast, I'm gonna wanna spend a day in Capri, I'm gonna wanna spend a day in Pompeii, and I'm gonna wanna spend 1 day, you know, at the beach in Positano. Okay, so that's 3 days. You know, Rome, 1 day I want to do the Colosseum, 1 day I want to make sure that I don't know, eat a huge 4-course meal. Okay, that's it. You know, that's 2 days. In Venice, I know I want to do a gondola ride and walk around. 1 day. Okay, so you just kind of gotta, you know, think very small. Again, next week I'll have a video about how to plan specifically in a city and get your city itinerary of what you want to do and what you want to plan and book ahead of time. But for this, just think big picture, okay? One thing you do want to look into now, though, is if you're going into any parks. So for example, with Pompeii and Vesuvius, they might not be open on certain days, so you want to check that ahead of time and make sure that you're going to be planning those days around the days that they're open. It's just a thought. You might not care if you miss something, but if, you know, it's something you really want to do, definitely check that ahead of time. And for stuff like Machu Picchu, you know, I don't know if there's a day that they're closed, but if there is a day that they're closed, you kind of want to plan that ahead of time and say, okay, I want to make sure that I'm doing this in the middle of the week as opposed to the weekend. Okay, so step 4 is where we start spending the money. Now is where you book your travel. I know you're probably thinking, what about accommodation? I haven't even mentioned that yet. Do not book your accommodation yet. First, you want to book your travel. This is why. Travel is the most complicated part. Getting from point A to point B is often the most difficult part of traveling. Let me tell you a secret. There's always gonna be hotels and a place to stay. Unless you're going somewhere on a huge weekend, like say you're in Munich during opening weekend or closing weekend of Oktoberfest, you're gonna find a place to stay. And even then, you'll probably find a place to stay because it'll just be a higher price, but there will always be somewhere for you to stay. There's Airbnb, there's VRBO, there's Hostelworld, there's hotels, booking.com, you know, last minute cancellations. You will always find somewhere to stay, I promise you. So worry less about booking, and booking's not gonna change prices as much, whereas flights and train travel and bus travel, not bus travel so much, but flights and car rentals and train travel can vary very differently from, you know, 1 week to 2 weeks. So it's kind of best to get it ahead and out of the way and have it set in stone and know how much money you're spending there before you move on to accommodation, because accommodation is going to be easy peasy. Which leads us to step number 5 in planning a country is book your accommodation. All right, so you've got an itinerary, you've got your planes, trains, buses, cars booked. Now is the fun part. Now you get to book your accommodation and find out where you want to stay. I'm going to do a whole nother blog about how to find cheap accommodation, but for this I'm just going to tell you, you know, there's tons of options. Booking.com, Hostelworld if you're by yourself, VRBO, Airbnb, good old-fashioned hotels. You know, so it's kind of just up to you where you want to stay, you know, and also where you're going. I mean, in Italy, you might want to go and stay at an agriturismo, but then in Peru, you might want to rough it, and, you know, you might want to backpack and meet other backpackers so that you have friends to hike with. So it's totally just up to you where you want to go and how you want to stay it. So totally up to you on what you decide about that. Check out in the description down below all of the links I have dropped to other videos on how to book cheap flights and some blog posts about my Italy itinerary. A couple of other fun things down there for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. Yeah, because then you get a little email or a little, you know, pop up every time that I post a new video, which is every Tuesday I'll be posting. And stay tuned next week for my How to Plan a City blog. Thanks, you guys.